Hello and welcome to the very last Parsha in the Torah in our series of the Gems of the Alshich. So we're about halfway through the whole cycle, even though it's the end. We started this in the middle, so we'll have to have another 6 months before we complete the whole cycle of the Parshas, with at least a little gem each week from the Alshich. This the last part of the Torah. That's chapter Lamed Gimel 33, and it's verse 1. The Parsha is called HaBracha. And this is the blessing. So in our little art scroll Chumash, it's in page 1112. This is what it says. We only have time for one verse. B'zayis HaBracha, and this is the blessing. Asher berach Moshe, which Moshe blessed, Isha Elokim Moshe, who was the man of God, Es b'nei Yisrael, the b'nei Yisrael, the Jewish people, lifnei Moshe before he passed away. And then, of course, what comes next is the blessings, the general statements about Hashem, the Jewish people, the relationship with him, and each and every one of the tribes, with one exception, each and every one of the tribes gets their own specific blessing. Shimon doesn't get a specific blessing; it's incorporated into Yehuda's blessing for reasons which we'll have to talk about another time. However, that's the posuk, and this is what the Alshich has to say. His first observation, remember, observation is the key thing with the Alshich. It starts off with a ve, an and. Vov is a joining word, an and, as they used to tell me in the elementary school. So it's joining to what came before, because it could have just said Zeus, this is the blessing. But it says, and this is the blessing. So what's the joining concept here? So let me read to you. Roy Lawson, we should consider El Vov shall Bizois. The Vov, the and, that appears before as the first word in the center, the first word in the Parsha. Achini, because it's there for a very simple reason. There's certainly room for somebody to be confused about this, what's going on at this moment in Jewish history. That there's an interruption. That as this, the whole of Devarim is really Moshe giving Musa to the Jewish people, and certainly if he's giving a blessing, you might assume there's a blessing coming from him. And therefore it's different, categorically different to the rest of the Torah, which is dictated through him from God. So this is going to be different. This is actually his last little final address to the Jewish people, his own final address. Therefore, you might think that the holiness of every letter and every word in the Torah extends to the beginning of this parsha, and then when Moshe gives his blessing, then it's interrupted, halted, and something completely different. So everything was from God until we come to this bit where Moshe is giving blessings to the Jewish people. And it will therefore simply be an expression of a blessing that any tzaddik, any great person on his deathbed or moments before his death would give to anybody he loved, his family, or in Moshe Rabbeinu's case, his people. Alkein hikel vov, so that's why there's a vov there. It's a joining word, it connects it. It connected the exact same process that gave us and dictated all of the Torah till now, is dictating the rest of the Torah, the final chapters or the final parts of the Torah to the very end. Beloy Omer Zayis HaBracha. That's what I say. This is the blessing. Could it be the blessing from Moshe? And it's the same thing. The Zayis Sefes on the Kainim V'Daimelo. No, it's how this is this identical to what came before. But Zem Shlosh, as he says, and reasons for the three reasons for this. It's the same as what came before. Echad, number one. Shem Dibri Moshe built a Daimelo in the Isha Zalasi. These are the words of Moshe. Moshe is exceptional. He's an exception. He's a unique. He's unique in all of human history, the only human being born with a mother, from a mother, who has reached such a spiritual level that he's really quantitatively different as an entity than anybody else. And we can see that clearly from the fact that when he comes down from Mount Sinai, his face shines. That's why he has to wear a veil. The veil is because people couldn't look at him. There's a transformation here, a physical transformation. He who was only physical, now becomes, only partially physical. He now, as it were, his spiritual, his soul now dominates. It's beyond physical. It's super physical, or supernatural, I really should say. And he shines. Okay. But that's one of the three reasons. Why would this be the same thing? Why would there be no interruption even if it came from Moshe? It's because he's Moshe. Built Adam Yelad Isha Zosai. He was completely different to any other human being. And that's why it says, V'zois HaBracha, this is the blessing. V'zois continuing. Asher Berach Moshe, that Moshe's blessing. And that means to say that it's a continuation, because he's a continuation. He is the mouthpiece of Hashem. He's going to explain this in a second. Secondly, yes, Isha, then it says he's Moshe, the man of God. What do you mean the man of God? So it says, V'stam devorov mi'itoyes baruch himi barov kadosh. And that means to say he's in such a level that even when he's not saying, God just spoke to me and announced this prophetic message, but everything that Moshe, at that stage, everything that Moshe says is from God. He literally is a constant and ongoing, without interruption, mouthpiece of what God has to say. Magam liyos es b'nei Yisrael, and of course, and he's speaking to the Jewish people, shagam heim b'nei Elkai umeshpia baruchas u'miyaz. And that's particularly going to be the case when these are blessings that are going to the B'nai Yisrael, the words that he blessed the Jewish people. They're also on a level which deserves to be the words coming to them in blessing directly from God through the conduit of Moshe Rabbeinu. And the third point he says, Shulif de Moisa, and that is, these words are said before his death. That means, Ki az shchina shura al tzaddik v'ruach yisir. Because at that point, in every tzaddik, that the words they say on their deathbed is very special. Yaakov Avinu gives blessings to his children on his deathbed. Now, I think we've mentioned this before, but maybe I want to emphasize something. So, I think I may have told you there's only 3 times in a Jew's life when you're guaranteed to, as it were, have Ruach HaKodesh, divine inspiration, and your choices and your decisions are actually inspired and dictated by Hashem. The first one is when you, let's start at the beginning. The first one is when you get married. Excuse me. Assuming that you go about it in the right way, for the right reasons. They've got the famous saying that the ideal match for you was already designed for you 40 days before you were created in your mother's womb. And a heavenly voice apparently said, Bas ploni ploni, this girl will marry this boy. In other words, the ideal half of your soul just waiting for you to be collected. And if you go about it seeking that person in the right way, for the right reasons, then Hashem will guarantee that you'll come together and it will prosper. Of course, you've got freedom of choice and you could make a mess of it. But generally, that's the one time when you're definitely going to have Ruach HaKodesh to be able to come together with the person that you should be coming together with. Another time, let's move this forward. Another time is, let's say, when the first baby and babies come along. When you name the child, the naming of the child, even though you spend a ton of effort, there's really very exciting a discussion and debate between you and your wife or you and your husband, and sometimes other members of the family, what name to choose. Ultimately, the name that you chose was inspired by God because you are your name. I think we mentioned this just recently. And the last time that you're going to choose, make a choice which is inspired by God, Ruach HaKodesh, is on your deathbed. But the words you will say then will be special. But if we're talking about Yaakov Avinu on his deathbed, but he's got Ruach HaKodesh, he's divine inspiration all the time. Moshe Rabbeinu certainly has divine inspiration all the time. So why is it emphasizing it before he dies? So it's not just that you're getting Ruach HaKodesh, you're getting extra Ruach HaKodesh. Even Moshe Rabbeinu on his level, which is incalculable really, but he's going to be getting even more to be able to give to them than he normally is given from heaven. So that's why it says all these 3 things. I think there's something we can easily take out of here. A blessing, as somebody called Reb Simcha Zissel explains, is not something which creates something new. When you bless somebody, you're not creating something new in them. The only entity possible, who can take something which is nothing and make it into something, is the Almighty. The whole universe was created yesh me'ayin, something from nothing. That sounds very much like the Big Bang, by the way, although they want to talk about an atom. But where did the atom come from? It has to come from something. Hashem took nothingness and made the entire universe. So Hashem is able to make something from nothing. Nobody else is. But nobody else is. What a tzaddik does when he gives a blessing is to take, or to cause spiritual forces to act upon what's already in you, to realize and maximize the potentials already there. So from this observation, we see something, I think, which is quite applicable. That is to say, he said, with regards to Moshe, he was exceptional, he was unique. And number two, we said, it was that the words would be coming from Hashem. He would have Ruach HaKodesh. And number three, at this particular time in his life, that Ruach HaKodesh would be multiplied. So that if you are looking for spiritual assistance of a mystical, Kabbalistic nature, the first thing is to make sure that the person you go to is a Moshe Rabbeinu. That is to say, somebody on the very, very highest level to allow you to get the blessing that you need. And you must make sure that they are not, as sadly happens a lot these days, a fraud. And you have to make sure that he's recommended by well-known rabbis who say this is the person, this is somebody to go to. The second thing is that you're wanting somebody who will have Ruach HaKodesh, will have inspiration from heaven. Now, they don't fill out forms or they don't have websites that say, I am Rabbi such and such and I have divine inspiration. That's not how it works. But I think you can generally assume that the greatest rabbis of the generation, i.e. the ones who are recognized by the generation as the greatest, that's the nearest you're going to come to, being able to check that box with a certain degree of confidence that that person will Ruach HaKodesh. And again, the timing. Now, you don't want to wait until they're on the deathbed, but there are times which it's appropriate to seek out a blessing. All those three are exactly what happens here when Moshe's moment to give blessings to the Jewish people arrives, and their moment to get blessings from Moshe arrives. And I think we can apply that in our lives as well. No, I'm definitely not one of those rabbis. However, as we have reached the end of the last Parsha, and as the Talmud says that the blessing of even a simple Jew, definitely me, is still a worthwhile thing. So, for those of you who have joined me in this journey, I think through 26 or 27 little gems of the Alshich, thank you very much. We'll have to do this again, so another 26 should get us through the year, and do a whole cycle. So let me give you a blessing that together we're able to do that, and then maybe go on to do another cycle with new gems of the Alshich. Who knows where this little beginning will take us through, but it should be one that gives everybody who's been participating in it, myself included. Although I can't give myself a blessing, so maybe you can give me one back. We should all have a year of blessing, and a year of success, and health, and wealth, satisfaction, and more gems of the Alshich.